In 1988, huge numbers of people gathered in Manchester and London to protest the controversial introduction of Section 28 of the 1988 Local Government Act. Drafted by Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government, the Act caused outrage in the LGBTQ community because of its blatant homophobia. Section 28 forbid local authorities from promoting homosexuality. They were specifically banned from publishing material on it and from teaching it in schools. This meant it was often difficult for LGBTQ+ young people to find support and positive representation at school. Section 28 is part of a long history of legislative battles over LGBTQ rights. Homosexuality was only partially decriminalised in England in 1967. Section 28 was seen as a step back in many ways. With members of the community already angry over the way the government was handling the AIDS crisis at the time, Section 28 further galvanised people into direct action. Through the 1970s and 80s, organisations related to lesbian and gay rights, and later AIDS activism, had been formed. These included the Gay Liberation Front, or GLF, the London Gay and Lesbian Teenage Group, the Black Lesbian and Gay Centre, and ACT UP London. These groups also worked to build community, raise consciousness, and provide support for LGBTQ people. There was an increasingly visible and proud subculture. GLF's out and proud politics meant people could be spotted wearing pin badges with slogans like, "Keep your filthy laws off my body," "Lesbians unite," and "Gays for socialism." You could go to gay club nights like Flesh at the Hacienda and see queer performance artists. There were LGBTQ theatre groups like Gay Sweatshop and Hormone Imbalance, and films by lesbian and queer filmmakers like Barbara Hammer and Derek Jarman. But growing up LGBTQ could also be lonely and dangerous. Many people were isolated by their geography, often growing up in homes that were unsupportive. Fear, stigma, and homophobic violence from peers and from the authorities were not uncommon things to encounter. This underlying homophobia was emboldened by the AIDS crisis, and it appears to have been one of the reasons for Section 28 being introduced. Other factors in Section 28's introduction were the Conservative government's opposition to the Labour-run Greater London Council, which funded many groups benefiting marginalised communities, the LGBTQ community amongst them, and scaremongering from the tabloid press. There was lots of opposition to the Act from its conception. Alongside the initial protests, more organisations like Stonewall and Outrage were formed as a direct result of campaigning against Section 28, and people fought through the 1990s to repeal it. Section 28 was finally repealed in 2000 in Scotland and 2003 in the rest of the UK.